In the history of basketball, there are few names that evoke the same level of admiration and reverence as Elgin Baylor, a basketball prodigy with unparalleled athleticism and skill. Baylor carved a path of greatness that forever changed the sport. Before Dr. J and before Air Jordan, there was Elgin Rabbit Baylor. So today, we'll be telling the story of one of the most forgotten legends in NBA history. The year is December 1933. Uzziel and John Baylor learned that they were expecting a child. The couple already had three children, one of whom was special care and special needs due to severe asthma, leading to frequent visits to the doctor. Given the challenging circumstances of the Great Depression, when many families were struggling, Uzziel considered seeking an abortion, as they were concerned about their ability to provide for another child. She confided in her husband, who supported her decision. However, fate intervened in an unexpected way. After attending church on Sunday, an elderly woman who Uzziel had never spoken to before approached her and offered her comforting words. "Don't worry about that baby. God will provide. That child will grow up to be a blessing." These heartfelt words deeply touched Uzziel, and she found herself reconsidering her decision to abort the baby. She was also puzzled by how the woman could have known about her pregnancy. On September 16th, 1934, a baby was born to Uzziel and John Baylor. In honor of his father's favorite watch brand, he named him Elgin, hoping that, like the watch, Elgin would be dependable and strong. Despite the initial uncertainties, the arrival of Elgin Baylor brought hope and blessing to the Baylor family. Elgin Baylor's childhood was deeply impacted by the pervasive racism of his era. As he grew up during an era of racial segregation, he encountered racial discrimination from an early age, first experiencing it at the age of 8 years old during a carnival outing with his sister, Columbia, who was not only just his sister, but his closest companion, friend, and protector. During the carnival, Elgin got separated from his sister in the crowd. A white man heard Elgin calling to his sister and deceitfully offered to take him to her by offering him a ride in his car. Realizing that it was a setup, when Elgin got in the car and he saw Columbia outside the window running, shouting his name, Elgin then knew he was in danger. The car sped up. Elgin opened the door and jumped out of the car, rolling on the ground. Elgin ran for his life. The men got out of the car. Four white men, all in their late teens, started chasing Elgin. Hurling racial epithets at him and threats of violence, Elgin ran. Inside of his mind, he said, "They can't catch me. I'm like a rabbit." This earned him the lifelong nickname Rabbit, symbolizing his remarkable speed. Elgin ran into his sister's arm, finding reassurance and comfort. He promised to never leave him again. Tragically, however, their hardships did not end there. On another occasion, as they exited a movie theater, a white woman directed racial slurs at Columbia, who was carrying Elgin on her back. She spit in Columbia's face. Columbia responded by slapping the girl in the face out of self-defense. Upon returning home, the situation escalated when two young white police officers, significantly younger than Elgin's father, confronted them. The officers condescendingly referred to John Baylor as boy and threatened to take Columbia into custody for her actions. In a difficult decision, John Baylor, Elgin's father, chose to handle the situation himself to protect his family. The officers told him, "Either you punish her or we'll take her in." He reluctantly agreed to discipline Columbia, fully aware that opposing the officers' authority could lead to severe repercussions, including the potential loss of their means of support. The officers watched as John Baylor was forced to whip his own daughter with a leather strap. The officers almost seemed to get pleasure out of watching the young girl get whipped. This would cause a rift between Elgin and his father. At the time, Elgin didn't fully grasp the harsh reality that his father had no real authority over the situation, and any disobedience to the officer's orders could endanger them all. This heart-wrenching account illustrates the sacrifices and challenges endured by individuals like Elgin Baylor's parents in the face of prevailing racial injustices. These experiences shed light on the historical struggles for equality and serve as a reminder of the importance of understanding and addressing the deep rooted issues of the past to foster a more just and compassionate future. Despite the racial barriers in the segregated environment of Washington, D.C. at the time, Elgin developed a passion for basketball. However, he faced several limitations as black people were prohibited from using white public parks, which had well maintained basketball courts. Undeterred, Elgin would sneak into the night into the white parks to play basketball. Although at the time he didn't have a basketball yet, so he used an old tennis ball before his family finally bought him a basketball of his own. Eventually, however, a basketball court was erected in the black neighborhood, allowing him to play more openly and not having to worry about police harassment. Elgin's commitment to basketball led him to play against older kids, gradually honing his skills to the point where he could defeat even college age opponents in a one on one game. He was one of the greatest one on one players in Washington, D.C. at the time. He was a legendary street baller in that neighborhood. He attended Phelps Vocational School, but during that period, opportunities for black athletes were scarce and they did not receive scholarships. However, with the opening of Spingarn, a new black high school, a glimmer of hope emerged for Elgin. Baylor pleaded with his father, who at the time thought basketball was a waste of time. And you got to understand, from a historical standpoint, these players were not looked at as millionaires in the future. Baylor played his first 2 seasons of high school basketball at Phelps Vocational School in 1951 and 1952 seasons. At the time, public schools in Washington, D.C. were segregated, so he only played against the other black high schools in the area. There, he set his first area scoring record of 44 points. During his 2 all-city years at Phelps, he averaged 18.5 and 27.6 points per game. He did not perform well academically, however. Baylor would eventually go to Spingarn High School in 1954, his name to the first team Washington All-Metropolitan, and was the first African American player named to that team. He also won the SSA's Livingstone Trophy as the area's best basketball player for 1954. He finished with 36.1 points per game average. On February 3rd, 1954, in a game against his old high school Phelps, he scored 31 in the first half, playing with 4 fouls the entire second half. Baylor scored 32 more points to establish a new DC area record with 63 points. This broke the point record of 52 by Jim Wexler, who had set that year before. However, because Wexler was white and Baylor was black, Baylor's record did not receive the same press coverage. During his time in high school, Elgin Baylor's remarkable athletic prowess attracted the attention of many female admirers. He became involved with an older woman named Barbara, with whom he eventually became intimate with and lost his virginity to. Unfortunately, Barbara later informed him that she was pregnant, and he found himself in a difficult situation. Fearful of how his stern old-fashioned father would react, Elgin hesitated to disclose the news to his family. Though his mother was more understanding, his father insisted that Elgin abandon his basketball aspirations and his high school education to assume responsibility for Barbara and the baby. As a result of this pressure, Elgin was coerced into marrying Barbara and had to leave high school to support her and the child. He secured employment at a furniture store while occasionally participating at pickup basketball games to keep his passion for the sport alive. However, several months later, Elgin discovered that the child was not his own. A family friend disclosed that Barbara had been seeing a doctor about her pregnancy even before meeting Elgin. After a paternity test confirmed that Elgin was not the father, Elgin experienced a sense of relief as he could now reclaim control over his life and pursue his true passion of basketball once again. However, several months later, Elgin discovered that the child was not his own. A family friend disclosed that Barbara had been seeing a doctor about her pregnancy even before meeting Elgin. After a paternity test confirmed that Elgin was not the father, Elgin experienced a sense of relief as he could now reclaim control over his life and pursue his true passion for basketball once again. In spite of his achievements as a standout high school basketball player, Baylor faced significant hurdles to his path to college recruitment. During that era, black high schools were not being scouted by college recruiters, which resulted in him being overlooked by majority of colleges. Although a few colleges were open to accepting him, his academic qualifications did not meet the requirements. Fortunately, Baylor's friend who attended College of Idaho helped secure a football scholarship for him in the 1954 to 55 academic year. However, he didn't end up playing football. Instead, he effortlessly earned a spot on the college basketball team without even needing to try out. Demonstrating his exceptional skills, he outshone his teammates that season by boasting an impressive 31 points and 21 rebounds per game. Following the season, the College of Idaho went through some changes, which led to the dismissal of their head basketball coach and limitations on scholarship. At this juncture, a Seattle car dealer sparked Baylor's interest in a Seattle university to secure eligibility. He took a year off and joined the AAU team, West Side Ford, based in Seattle. Despite being selected by the Minneapolis Lakers in the 14th round of the 1956 draft, Baylor chose to continue his education. During the 56-57 season, Baylor averaged 29.7 points per game and 20.3 rebounds per game for Seattle. The next season, Baylor averaged 32.5 points per game and led the Seattle University Chieftains, now known as the Redhawks, to the NCAA championship game. Seattle's only trip to the Final Four, falling to the Kentucky Wildcats. Following his junior year, Baylor was drafted again by the Minneapolis Lakers, this time with the number one pick in the draft, and this time he opted to leave school to join them for the 58-59 season. The Minneapolis Lakers utilized the top pick in the 1958 NBA draft to select Baylor. That Laker franchise that drafted Elgin Baylor had a rich history of winning. They won 7 titles in 2 different leagues. But the team had quickly fallen out of grace after the retirement of George Mikan. The Lakers found themselves with a 19-53 record with an aging and sluggish squad. Additionally, the Lakers had faced financial difficulties and lacked a permanent home arena due to a declining popularity. In a dire state, the Lakers owner Bob Short considered selling the team, but he believed that Baylor's exceptional athletic abilities, vertical style, could rescue the franchise. In a 1971 interview with the LA Times, Short confessed that had Baylor declined that offer, the team would have likely gone bankrupt, as a testament to Baylor's significance in the team's business strategy. Basketball historian James Fisher credited him as the NBA's first franchise player. So remember that next time you see a Mount Rushmore of Laker players and Baylor is left off. Baylor's impact was immediate and surpassed all expectations, ultimately saving the Lakers franchise. During his rookie year in the 1958-59 season, he achieved impressive statistics, ranking 4th in scoring, 25.9 points per game, 3rd in rebounding at 15.0 points per game, and 8th in assists at 4.1 assists per game. In one memorable game, he even scored 55 points, which was then the 3rd highest single game scoring record in the league, following Joe Folks at 63 and Mikan at 61. Elgin Baylor's electrifying playing style, emphasizing a more vertical approach to the games, played a more pivotal role in rescuing the Lakers from financial distress and potential collapse. The team was grappling with difficult challenges, and Baylor's dynamic contributions on the court proved instrumental in keeping the franchise afloat. Despite achieving remarkable success and fame, Elgin again would encounter racism, reminiscent of his childhood experiences. On January 16, 1959, during a road game in Charleston, West Virginia, he took a courageous stand by refusing to play after the team's hotel denied lodging to 3 of the black players on the Lakers. In the face of adversity, Baylor expressed his dignity and humility, asserting that he would not accept being treated as an object for public entertainment. Both the Lakers owner and the commissioner at the time, Maurice Poldoff, stood by Baylor's decision. They stood by Baylor's side, taking no punitive action against him for his principled stance. It's noteworthy that during that era, advocating for social justice, as the NBA frequently does today, was virtually unheard of. Despite the support from the NBA, Baylor's stance against racial discrimination earned him hundreds of death threats from individuals who sought to silence him and to restrict his role to merely shut up and dribble. In 1960, the Lakers underwent significant changes, relocating from Minnesota to Los Angeles, also drafting Jerry West as their point guard. From the seasons 1960-61 to 62-63, Baylor displayed extraordinary scoring prowess, averaging 34.8, 38.3, and 34 points per game, respectively. On November 15, 1960, during the 60-61 season, Baylor achieved a remarkable feat, setting an NBA scoring record of 71 points in a victory against the New York Knicks, while also securing 25 rebounds. This accomplishment made him the first NBA player to score more than 70 points in a game, surpassing his own previous record of 64 set that year before. Baylor's record stood until Wilt's infamous 100-point game during the 1961-62 season while serving as a United States Army Reserve and stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington. Baylor's active duty commitments limited his availability to play with the Lakers. He could only join the team on weekends while on a pass, making it impossible to practice with the team before or during the season. Despite these constraints, and participating in just 48 games, Baylor managed to amass over 1,800 points, averaged 38.3 points per game, which is the highest in league history for anyone not named Wilt Chamberlain, along with 18.6 rebounds per game and 4.6 assists per game. Not bad for a part-time NBA player, dropping 38 points per game while also serving the Army. Baylor played a pivotal role for the Lakers, and together with West, they formed an almost unstoppable dynamic duo. Despite their incredible performances, they faced tough competition, especially from the dominant Celtics during the 1960s. The Celtics and Lakers finals battles were highly competitive, with 3 series going to 7 games, and 2 of those series going to 6 games. Remarkably, in those 7-game losses, the Lakers were defeated by a combined total of just 7 points. While Baylor did have off shooting nights, he was generally a dependable and prolific scorer for the team. One notable example was in Game 6 of the 1962 NBA Finals, where Baylor scored a staggering 61 points in an overtime victory, setting the playoff scoring record until Michael Jordan's legendary 63-point performance. Despite their efforts, luck often seemed to favor the Celtics in those critical moments, leaving the Lakers frustrated with a perceived curse. Adding to their challenges were Baylor's injuries and hindering the team's championship aspirations. Nonetheless, Baylor's contributions and performances on the court made him a Lakers legend and a crucial figure in the team's history. During the opening game of the 1965 Western Divisional Playoffs, Baylor experienced a severe knee injury that necessitated surgery and prevented him from participating in the rest of the playoffs. Despite his injury, he managed to score more than 24 points in each of the following 4 seasons. The limitations of knee surgery at the time and the lack of adequate rehabilitation resulted in persistent knee issues. As a consequence, Baylor underwent surgery on both knees, significantly impacting his playing abilities for the remainder of his career. He was no longer the high flyer that he used to be. The Lakers would go back to the finals, again losing to the Boston Celtics. They lost in another heartbreaking Game 7 to the Lakers. This time, as the 60s would go on, the Lakers would continue to make finals appearances, but they would eventually have a heartbreaking loss again to the Boston Celtics in Game 7 of the 1969 finals, this time with Wilt Chamberlain in his prime. Then, in 1970, a year that should have been the Lakers, after Bill Russell and Sam Jones retired, the Lakers again would have nagging injury. Wilt Chamberlain and Elgin Baylor would miss significant parts of the season. They would then lose another heartbreaking Game 7, this time to the up-and-coming New York Knicks. Then, in the 1971 season, Baylor played only 2 games before suffering a ruptured Achilles tendon. At this point, the Lakers looked washed up. They were all past their prime. Following this setback, he made the decision to retire just 9 games into the subsequent 71-72 season due to his ongoing nagging injuries. Baylor openly expressed to the press that he could no longer perform at the highest level, and he believed it was best to create a roster space for the younger, hungrier players like Jim McMillan. But what did I say about Elgin Baylor's luck? Right after Elgin Baylor retires, the Lakers win. They win again. 33 games in a row. Then the Lakers would go on and win a title, defeating the Knicks in 5 games. Elgin missed out on his opportunity to win a championship. He's not officially listed as a champion, though the Lakers organization did give him a ring. So throughout his impressive 14-year tenure with the Lakers as forward, Baylor contributed significantly to leading the team to the NBA Finals on 8 occasions, though unfortunately Baylor lost in every finals he played in, and the year he retires, the Lakers would go on and win the championship. Elgin, in 1974, was hired to be the assistant coach and later the head coach for the New Orleans Jazz. But he had a lackluster 86-135 record and was fired following the 78-79 season, shortly before the team moved to Salt Lake City. Elgin Baylor, I think most people my age, and a little bit older than me, remember him as the executive of the Los Angeles Clippers. His executive career began in 1986 when Baylor was hired with the Los Angeles Clippers as the team's vice president of basketball operations. He was selected as the NBA Executive of the Year in 2006. During his tenure, the Clippers managed only 2 winning seasons and amassed a win-loss record of 607, 1,153 losses. They made the playoffs only 4 times. Baylor would eventually step down in 2008. But is it Baylor's fault that the Clippers were bad? He worked under Donald Sterling, who was notoriously cheap. He notoriously underballed players. He notoriously looked for reasons not to pay his players what they were worth. And in games, he would throw abuse at his own players to throw them off of their game just so he could make an excuse that they're not a good player. It's no secret that Donald Sterling was a racist. I think we all remember the racist tapes of Sterling that came out in 2014. He received a lifetime ban from the NBA. The rest of the NBA owners unanimously voted to have him removed. So why did Elgin Baylor stay working for Sterling? When after the tapes came out, Elgin Baylor revealed that this is the Sterling he'd been working for all those years. So why did he continue to work for him for so long? Well, Elgin Baylor wanted to prove that he could be as good of an executive as he was as a player. He wanted to win at that level. Much like Jerry West, who was an incredible executive, Baylor wanted a piece of that pie for himself. Yes, Elgin Baylor was abused even while being the executive. Sterling repeatedly looked at his players as his property. Baylor recounted stories where Donald Sterling refused to hire a black coach. When Baylor even tried to get the Hall of Fame coach John Thompson, Sterling had a racist belief that a basketball team should be a bunch of poor black Southern basketball players with a white coach. Baylor, in his book, gave many accounts of Sterling's racist. A notorious example was when Danny Manning, an amazing player who was the Clippers' first overall pick, his time for the contract extension came, and he met with Donald Sterling and Elgin Baylor. And Danny Manning's father was there. Danny Manning wanted a max contract. Sterling, in a disrespectful way, notoriously underballed him. Manning couldn't figure out why they wanted to pay him so low. Then Sterling infamously said to him, "My offer is enough for a poor black boy like you." So Sterling was not a good owner. But Elgin wanted to win. He wanted to prove that despite the circumstances that he was under, just like when he was younger, despite the racial abuse that he fought, he still proved he was an amazing basketball player. He wanted to prove he could win as a general manager. And yes, he was a good general manager. He won that Executive of the Year award in 2006. Imagine if Elgin Baylor was given the tools and resources to really build a team. In 2009, Baylor took legal action against the Clippers team owner, Donald Sterling, team president, and the NBA for filing an employment discrimination lawsuit. He alleged that being underpaid during his time with the team and claimed that the termination was motivated by age and race. Though he dropped the racial discrimination claims later, the suit continued. However, in 2011, a jury ruled in favor of the Clippers on remaining claims, determining that Baylor's dismissal was due to the team's poor performance. Despite the legal outcome, Baylor found some consolation when the Donald Sterling was banned for life from the NBA in 2014 due to the exposure of racist comments made by Sterling that were leaked in audio to TMZ. Elgin Baylor unfortunately passed away on March 22nd, 2021 at the age of 86 in a Los Angeles hospital due to natural causes. He was laid to rest in the Forest Lawn Memorial Park, Hollywood Hills, survived by his wife Elaine and their daughter Crystal and 2 children from a previous relationship named Alan and Allison, and he is survived by his sister Gladys. So I've said it before, Elgin Baylor is the most underrated player in NBA history. His life has a compelling story. The moves and the innovation that he brought to the game changed the game forever. And in my opinion, he could survive in any era. So why is Elgin Baylor so underrated? So let's look at the reasons why I think Elgin Baylor is so criminally underrated. Number one, he played in an era of the 1950s and 60s and early 1970s at a time when the media coverage of the NBA wasn't widely as celebrated as it is today. And as a result, many of his impressive performances were not received well by the media. As a result, many of his impressive performances were not as well recorded, were not a lack of championship. Everybody remembers the winner, Bill Russell, with 11 championships, Wilt with 2 championships. Despite being an exceptional player, Baylor's teams did not win any NBA championships in his career. And going 8-0 in the finals, timing. Baylor's prime years coincided with the dominant era of players like Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell and Oscar Robertson. These legends often garnered more attention and accolades, which can overshadow Baylor's remarkable achievements. Number 4, the impact of the game. Baylor's style of play was ahead of its time. He was known for his acrobatic moves, creativity, scoring abilities, which laid the groundwork for future players. However, the appreciation for his contributions to the evolution of the game might not be fully acknowledged during his playing days. He also had limited media exposure early in his career playing for Minneapolis. Retiring before the 1972 championship hurts his legacy, as some people view he wasn't important to the team, like Wilt and West. But I'd argue that 72 championship team was what the Lakers' true potential was, what they should have been. So that just might be why Elgin Baylor is one of the most underrated players in basketball history. And in my opinion, the most underrated player in basketball history, and possibly in the conversation for one of the greatest forwards of all time. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and share.